How are you?
I'm good. How are you, Mum?
Yeah, not too bad. Guess what?
What?
We have this amazing guest today. A lovely, beautiful young lady that I met earlier this year. And I don't think she even realizes how she has been inspiring to us, perhaps. And I don't think me speaking about her will do her justice. So perhaps her introducing herself and telling everybody a little bit about herself will help people understand just why this person is actually so inspiring. So let me introduce you to Charni. Charni, welcome. Thank you for joining us today.
Thank you for having me. Very excited for today.
Would you like to start and, tell us a little bit about yourself, who you are?
Okay, so my name is Charni. I am a published poet and spoken word artist. So I write and perform poetry. I also work in a high school as an admin assistant. I also work for a company called The Poet Life as an admin assistant as well. So I'm very active in all things arts and culture. So yeah, that's just a bit about me.
So I hope you don't mind me saying this, but
yeah,
there's lots of other things that you've done. Do you want to think a little bit about those as well? Because
what else have I done? So earlier on this year, I was involved with a project where I wrote a play. The play was put on at Hounslow Arts Centre, and yeah, I received a really lovely review and got 4 stars for it. And I've since I was perhaps maybe even the start of this year, I've been involved in a lot more sort of workshops and trying to broaden my creative field and try different things, try new things, explore things, and really just trying to push myself creatively of what I can do and what I can write and what I can achieve. So yeah.
You still forgot something, Charni, didn't you?
What else have I forgotten?
You still forgot something. I think there's 2 things that you've already written that you know.
So yeah, about the books. So I've got 2 poetry collections. The first one was my lockdown baby called Impression. It was a project that I wrote over lockdown and then released while we were still in lockdown. And then my second collection called For the Moment. This is what it looks like.
Oh, we can't see because of the blur.
Yeah, it's my second collection. It's called For the Moment, and it's predominantly about life poetry. And I wrote it probably about 2 years ago now. And yeah, those 2 have been big projects that I had been working on. I've always wanted to put a book together, like I have a proper poetry collection. And then lockdown gave me the time and the sort of headspace to be able to do it. And then off the sort of domino effect of the first one, I think writing about life poetry, I think, felt like the sort of normal thing to do. Felt like the right thing to do. So I leaned into more of that sort of stuff with this collection. So yeah.
Great. So you are truly a humble person, because if I hadn't prompted you,
yeah, I mean,
said those things, would you? And that
being an artistic creative person, you've got your mind on so many other things. So yeah.
Yeah, so that's what I think. That's why I think you're you're kind of patient and calm, and you're not this person shouting, "Oh, I got this and I've done this," and blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
You're so measured and gathered about it. I think so I'm quite I don't know, how you would describe the type of energy that I have, like a kind of, what would you say?
Megaphone.
Megaphone.
Megaphone energy.
But no, but I don't
So if Mom's megaphone energy, what does that make you?
Megaphone.
I go for microphone energy, you go for megaphone energy. What kind of volumes are we hitting, Marty?
Go on.
Speakerphone.
Yeah, there we go.
So do you know what I mean? I think you have this kind of patience,
Mhm.
stillness about you, and I think I have, and I think others would as well, like that have met you or come across you. Actually, it's really inspiring, especially for high energy people like
Yeah.
myself.
No, I really appreciate you for saying that, but I think sometimes it's quite nice to have that balance.
Mm.
And yeah, and I think a lot of that stillness and that calm or collectedness, I hope that comes through in my writing as well. And yeah, so people can find some sort of comfort or solace in it when they read it, or give them things to think about or resonate with how it feels, definitely.
So on that note, what inspired you to start writing about poetry, and how has your Punjabi heritage influenced your work?
So I first started writing poetry, maybe let's say 2014, 2015. So I did my undergraduate degree in creative writing and English literature. So we wrote in lots of different formats and genres. So I wrote non-fiction for a little bit, lots of different genres, wrote fiction, non-fiction. And then as I sort of started practicing more, I really fell in love with writing poetry. So when I did my master's, although I wrote a non-fiction dissertation, in my downtime, I was always writing poetry, and I think this is the thing, you try and experiment with all the different styles, and then you find one that feels like more of your artistic voice. But I think in relation to being Punjabi, I think the influence is more so as I'm getting older. So for my master's, my dissertation was on like spirituality and Sikhism. So it was a lot of research based, but it was also a lot of just my own personal experience. And I wanted to think about being brought up in that faith, what that means, what does it mean to be a British Asian, like South Asian woman. And so that's been sort of interweaving. But as I've gotten older, yeah, I'm trying to embrace more of being Indian and speaking Punjabi and embracing Punjabi culture a lot more. I think when we were younger, like looked down upon. And now I think a lot because of multiculturalism and the sort of society we live in now, it's embraced a lot better, and the sense of understanding and nuances of language and culture is a lot more celebrated, which is really lovely to see. And so I guess as I've sort of evolved as a writer and as a person, I'm leaning in on it more. I'm embracing using, the odd phrase or word or term in Punjabi here, there in my poems. I wouldn't go as far as saying I'd write a full poem in Punjabi. I don't think I'm there yet. But it's nice. It's a nice way of sort of having like a fusion of Punjabi, because there's certain phrases or certain things that sound better in Punjabi that I think the English language can't capture in the same way, and vice versa. So it's just a form of expression, and like trying to find the best way of saying what you want to express. So yeah.
And it's interesting how you called it a fusion.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? That you've started to add some words from your
Yeah.
Punjabi language. And like you say, meaning is such a big thing, isn't it? Because
Mm-hmm.
if you haven't got the right word, it could be like totally different meaning, couldn't it?
Yeah, and I think, to be honest, I think the audience have to play a massive role in that. When I first started writing, and probably even now, it depends what rooms you're in, what kind of spaces you're in. Because I've been in more South Asian spaces now, using Punjabi phrases or terms, because you know it's going to be understood, or you can sort of translate as you go along, and you feel like people will know what you mean. You feel more liberated to use it. And I think the best part of being of both cultures is that you can sort of tap in and tap out of what things you want to have from both. So using the language as and when is a great resource to have. And I think if we know it, I might as well use it. Why not?
It's interesting because obviously you're of like I think I'm above your generation,
Yeah.
and Mahi's probably below your generation, if you know what I
Yeah.
mean, kind of in the middle of
But
us.
this is what I'm saying. It's great to sort of have that intergenerational conversation and
Yeah.
see where we're at in society and culture, and you know what has changed, what is going to change, even perhaps even anticipate how we think things will change. What core values do we want to keep? I mean, Punjabi is, unfortunately, it's a dying language. You know, not many people, I mean, I can't read or write it, but I can speak it. But I think not as many people are learning it, or is sort of dying out from one generation to another. And depending on where you live geographically, if you're more inclined to speak English at home because it's easier, or you don't have another generation in the household, you sort of had no reason to. I grew up with my grandparents, so the only way of communicating with them would be to speak in Punjabi, so we sort of had to. So it was kind of like an easy exchange. They would teach us things in Punjabi, we teach them things in English, and we would be able to communicate.
Mhm. It's interesting, Mahi, because I think you have more recently learnt more Punjabi, and why is that, Jean?
Because my great grandma has started coming around more, and she only knows Punjabi, so I picked up a lot more Punjabi over like this past year. Because before we didn't really speak Punjabi, I spoke it a bit, but now I speak it every day.
Yeah, that's good. That's
And
good.
taking this back to the poetry, have you ever thought of translating some of your poems into Punjabi?
No, I write, I mean, when I write with how I want to say it.
Uh-huh.
And then if Punjabi flows into it, great. But I don't forcefully be like, okay, I'm going to write a poem in Punjabi today. I will have the odd term or the odd phrase where I think, oh, you know what, like it sounds better in Punjabi, let me put that in. I don't know if I would do a whole poem in Punjabi. Maybe, yeah. I'd have to be really like moved or inclined in that way in order to do it, to make it feel really authentic. But yeah, it could be something that I do. I mean, if I use it more and more as time goes along, inevitably at some point it probably will reach a point where I'll be like, let's just do the whole thing in Punjabi and see what happens.
Might as well.
Might as well. We're here now.
We're here now. Because your Punjabi is very good, actually.
Thank you.
You know, your spoken Punjabi is really good, and it's quite funny how you bring the phrases in, actually.
Yeah,
Just
and I think I use it most of the time. I use it for. I think again, it's just certain phrases sound better, or the message of what you're trying to say, or the sentiment, even the feeling that you're trying to get across, sounds better in Punjabi. And when you're among a group of people who sort of can understand that, it's a form of its own solidarity. It's like we get each other, we know each other, you know what I'm saying, you know where I'm coming from. And usually ends up being quite comical. And it's fun. It's fun. We use it in a way that isn't, you know, it doesn't have to be serious and, you know, all of that. It can be used in a very light-hearted way.
So in that essence of solidarity, Mahi, when do we speak Punjabi to each other the most?
When we're outside in
Yeah.
public.
Okay. Okay.
Good to hear.
Or know what we're talking about? It's like solidarity. You know that word solidarity came up.
Yeah.
Solidarity, isn't it, sometimes?
Yeah.
Thank you, actually. It's interesting to hear, you know, how actually the two, you know, the British language, or the English language and the Punjabi language actually can be fused together, you know, to create a kind of, like you said, a fusion of that.
Yeah. Yeah.
You just hear it in songs, don't you? Which have lyrics.
Yeah.
I don't think I've ever seen it in poetry, and I'm not that as familiar as you are in the poetry in that world, you know.
Yeah. Yeah.
Whether there is more like that or not. So can you tell us some key moments or experiences in your journey that you think have really influenced your artistic voice?
I think finding your artistic voice is a very long process, unless someone's found like a life hack and told no one. But the way that I've done it is by writing in different forms and then finding out, okay, you know, what kind of stuff do I like writing? And it's sort of your style, what you want to talk about, the way that you want to talk about it, all of those things sort of evolve over time. And so I think 2014, 2015, I'd say I sort of found my voice in poetry as such. But I was still a long way from like performing to the level that I sort of perform now. And it was more about, I guess in the early stages, it's about getting the ideas down, really crafting and deciding what you want to say. And then there's the whole process of editing. And then when you're performing a poem, you're learning it in a completely different way. So yeah, I think there's been moments where I was just like, I don't know how you're supposed to now, like the whole point of having a voice or having a style is that you're able to write something and someone is able to tell, oh, I know that's definitely Charney's writing. I can just tell. You know, you can hear it in, and you know, it could be even with other writers is the same, that you can hear it in the, you can, even though you're reading it, you can hear it in their voice. And although that isn't important, it's nice to have that imagination of being, okay, how, if that person was to read it to me, how would it be read? But I think I've had, you know, every creative journey has its ups and downs. So key moments for me were, it did take me a while to sort of be, I did the open mic scene for a good number of years. So it'd be attending a lot of events, learning new poems, showing up, doing all of that. And then at some point, hoping to be booked to be a headline or a feature where you get a slightly longer set, maybe 15, 20 minutes, and you can really showcase the breadth of your work. In an open mic slot, you only get, what, 5 minutes. You're lucky, you know, depending on how many poems you want to do, is really not a lot of time. So in a longer set, you get to show a little bit more flair. So when you've got a theme or something like that, you really get to sort of, you know, walk people through a story or some sort of journey that you're taking the audience on. And I really have enjoyed doing that. And, you know, I hope I get the opportunities to still continue to do that. My first experience of that was doing like a 20-minute set at Poetics. And that was the first sort of time that felt like, you know, oh my God, like I'm doing my own sort of headline. And you know, like the audience were very receptive, and I did a whole mixture of different themes because it was quite open. So I really just got an opportunity to go and share and talk about things that I wanted to talk about, things that were on my mind or had been up until that point. So that I would say was a key moment. The other one I think would be performing at Somerset House, which was a really wonderful opportunity that I got to do. It was in celebration of South Asian Heritage Month. And yeah, same like 15-20 minutes set of performing on themes of like home and culture and identity and what that means. So I leaned in on the idea of the fusion of what does it mean to be a British Asian woman, and embracing those two cultures and having poems that represented that, definitely.
And, you know, when we talk about key moments, there's always a shift.
Yeah.
In your thinking or something. Have you had times in your life where you've had that shift just because of your experience, good or bad?
Yeah, definitely. From a sort of a high point and low points as well. I went through a period where, because I was doing a lot of open mics and I wasn't being booked for headlines or features, I was thinking maybe it's something about my style, but I also don't want to change the way that I write or the way that I perform because it will be inauthentic to who I am. But there were parts of me that just like, I absolutely need to do something big and bold and dramatic for people to really take me seriously. And I think, you know, touching on the point that you made earlier, because I'm quite calm and cool and collected, that obviously comes across in my set. So I was like, let's do something really loud and boisterous and, you know, like to properly go in and take up space somewhere. So I wrote a poem called Playing Cards with actual playing cards that I used, and I performed it, and it, you know, it's one of the poems that people most know me for. Really well-loved poem from the rest of the poetry community, and it's one I love performing. It's one of my favorite ones that I've written. And after that sort of moment of performing it live, people are like, wow, like people started to take me a little bit more seriously. Like, actually, she's got a lot in the bag that is being massively underestimated. So that was one sort of like a low moment that really spurred that on. But in terms of like positive shifts as well, being in a lot more South Asian spaces, it really made me consider the kind of poetry that I write.
Yeah.
I went to an event called Her Voice in Leicester, which was for and by about South Asian women, Sikh women predominantly. And, you know, every sort of variation of Sikh in one roof, and listening to all these women talking about, you know, being brought up in, again, this sort of fusion culture and trying to maintain not losing your Indianness, quote unquote, but then also trying to, you know, sustain or maintain your faith as well. So being a Sikh woman and navigating the challenges of that as well. I found that whole experience really moving. I've never been in a room of that many South Asian women who I resonated with at that level before.
Yeah.
Even just seeing that many brown faces in a room was a bit of a, I haven't experienced anything like that, because predominantly of the spaces that I've operated in have been either massively mixed or, you know, it would be very few ethnic minorities. So I've gotten very used to that. And then when you go from being the minority to literally this is all of us, whoa, yeah, it was it was such a positive experience. And because I was invited to come and perform in more South Asian spaces, I think I started thinking about identity and culture and all of those things a lot more. So I, you know, that really informed my writing as well. You network and you connect with people, and it makes you think about things in a different way. And you think, actually, I want to write about stuff like this. And then that sort of inspires what you then write moving along.
So on the topic of being a South Asian woman, what challenges have you faced whilst being a South Asian woman, and how have you, in the literacy world, and how have you overcome them?
Being a brown woman is no easy feat. I think there's challenges, and then there's perceived challenges, and then there's things that you just never would have thought of. So as an example, like I've gotten very used to being the only brown woman in a room, or the only brown person in the room, period. And I would like to have more representation. I would like to have more diversity, inclusion, and all of that. Challenges, I think, can be deciding whether, you know, do I belong in this space? How can I take up space here? What does that mean? And then you're very aware of representation and how you're moving, and what does that say about you if you are going into those spaces? And other challenges of, like, you know, as an, you know, not feeling like your work isn't being given the due credit. Watching other people's careers sort of fast track the process because they're of a slightly different position. That could be, you know, any form of the isms that we can think of. And sometimes that gave them a license to get ahead in a way that I didn't have. That's not to say that I didn't capitalize and do the best that I can with what I have. because as a people we are very resourceful, so we make do. And I think, you know, I'm not sitting here and complaining about it. I'm saying that, you know, there are things that make it hard. And, you know, I think it's not a traditional route for a brown woman, if I'm going to be honest. It's not a stereotypical job. Being a creative and an artistic person, you know, you don't know whether you're trying to fit in or whether you're trying to stand out, or you're doing both. Yeah, like trying to explain that, or what that means, or what your career means to you. Even like how you operate, how your mind thinks, the way you create things, to someone who isn't of that understanding can be really quite complicated. And yeah, I just think being understood is quite a big thing. It's one thing to be seen, it's one thing to be heard, but to be understood, I found the hardest thing. You can do all the things that you want to do and express yourself and be as articulate as you can, but if things don't land, they don't land, and you have to sort of accept that. I think the challenge of the unsaid rejection, which is like when you're passed over some people or you're overlooked in a certain way, that is becoming sort of, especially when you go through a period where it feels like it's like all the time, and you don't know what the set credentials are, what you can do to be able to make other people take you seriously and things like that. Those are just the challenges I can think of off the top of my head, but I'm sure there's many more. I think even just, not even as a brown woman, just generally as a person, just time and commitment, and you have so many other projects and so many other things that you're working on. This has probably been, these first 6 months have been, because I've been involved with so many things and I'm wearing so many different hats. Even just like self-care and just taking care of myself and making sure I don't burn out or be, you know, too overly stressed. And I've at times found things really overwhelming, because you are trying to juggle so much all the time, and because it's, you know, it's just me, I'm doing everything. So if I'm not doing any of those things, nothing moves forward. And that can be both very liberating, and it can stop you in its tracks on the days where you have low motivation or none, because it's literally your personal choice to do it. You know, no one's asked you to go and do this thing. It's literally all come from you, and you know, I want to honor that by doing it in the way that it needs to be done, and making it sure it's done right and properly. Yeah, those are just some of the challenges.
There are quite a lot of challenges, actually, like, you know, just talking about them probably.
Yeah.
God, like I've gone through this journey and I've had all these challenges, but look at me, I still stand strong. I still persevere.
Yeah.
You know, I celebrate the things that I do achieve.
Yeah.
And
I mean, I think it would be dishonest of me to say that it hasn't been difficult, because I'm not trying to pitch that, you know, it's not hard. Of course it is. And, you know, even the imposter syndrome of, again, being a brown woman, a creative, until you go out there and meet people that are like you feel like it's just you. And, you know, I had a similar thing with the play. I was like, I've never written a play before. Of course, imposter syndrome is going to kick in. And I'm working with people who come from like a theatre background. They've worked on previous projects before. And I had, you know, a massive moment of imposter syndrome, and I rang the facilitator who's running the workshop, and I was like, I think you've got the wrong girl, basically. Of like, I come from a poetry background. Like, yes, I've read plays and I've watched plays, but writing a script is a completely different ball game. And she was just like, just come and you'll understand once it's done. And so I was sort of easing myself in, trying to keep an open mind, and just like, but going through the whole immersive learning experience and be like, I'll figure it out as I go along. I'm not going to say no. And, you know, I ended up actually writing the play, and it was, you know, it was a production, and it was a whole thing, and it happened. And I'm thinking if you know, she hadn't talked me out of it, my self-doubt would have kicked in so hard that I actually wouldn't have gone through the whole process. So sometimes just a conversation or an acknowledgement of like, I know this is unfamiliar territory to you, but that doesn't mean that you can't do it. And yeah, and you know, sometimes in your own head you're thinking, oh, you know, like, you know, what, like, why are you doing something that, you know, you could stick to poetry, stay in your lane, do your thing, but no, you have to go and do all these other things, and it's part of that creative challenge. No, that's too bright.
Is that too bright
That's
now?
right. Let me just leave it.
Put that one on over there behind you, maybe. No, maybe that just.
Yeah, let's keep natural light. That's like heaven light.
You know, my friend, she brought her son to my house once, and
Yeah.
basically the whole house is painted white.
Yeah.
Upstairs, all the rooms, everywhere is like just white. And my
Yeah,
house,
yeah.
I like it, right? And she was walking up the stairs and she said to her son, we're in heaven.
Yeah, literally. There's levels to lighting, and you lot have decided that we're going for heaven lighting.
Look, because that's how we're feeling. I think
Yeah.
heaven, aren't we?
Yeah, you're at home. Home is, yeah.
What support did you get from your family?
I've been quite lucky in the sense that I am very well supportive, and I think support comes in lots of different ways. Support can be liking or sharing a post that I've, or you know, a video I put up on Instagram of, you know, my poem or my spoken word piece. It could be commenting on things, people like messaging me and saying something really resonated with them, and we have like a whole conversation off the back of it. It's the, you know, the audience that are paying attention and listening and really taking in what you're hearing, what they're hearing. Yeah, it's just people showing up. I think for me, what I've learned is the biggest way of showing support is just showing up. And for my families and friends, it's going, it's bless them, they have to listen to me when I'm having a low moment or usually an overthinking moment of being like, you know, so this is what I need to do, or this is what's happened, I don't know what's going on, or that sort of thing. Is those moments because I have like a community of other poets who sort of understand what that is and what that feels like. They can just listen and be like, you know, and be supportive. You know, some of those friends are cheerleaders of your work. They're there to be sort of on the days where your self-belief is a little bit low, because they have so much faith in what you do. It sort of transfers over a little bit, and you're like, you know, if I don't know now, I'll figure it out and it will happen. It will work out in the end, and having all of that sort of thing. So whether they're physically present or over the phone or just sending a supportive message, all of those things go a really long way. Because writing and certainly certain creative artistic projects are very lonely jobs. You in a room with your pen and your paper or your laptop or whatever, or you and the mic. Whatever it is a very sort of isolating job. You do spend a lot of time on your own, and because other people who have similar disciplines, they get it. I mean, I'm not gonna lie to you, both of you look like you're a, you know, if Heaven had a reception and you lot on the front desk counter saying, okay, we'll buzz you in and we'll open the gate. Hello, who are you? Where have you come from? And you know, thank you for choosing God. How can we help you today?
Charni is describing those of you that are either going to heaven or hell. We're
gonna be, you know, like when you go and vote and someone told you, okay, you know what, this is your name, what's your address, you need to go on this side of the room, speak to this person, one of you's checking on the system, like, okay, we need to redirect you in this way.
yeah.
So yeah,
We're doing that for heaven and hell.
yeah, for heaven and hell, literally.
We're at that door, aren't we, Marty?
Yeah, and you're using that mirror as a point of reflection. So we're like, take a good look at yourself in the mirror and you tell me where you think you need to go, and I'll tell you what the record says. We're just checking in on the system. We'll just let you know.
Yeah, let's just have a look.
Yeah, we'll just have a quick
it
look.
tells us actually.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, on this occasion.
On this occasion.
Yeah,
Literally.
a great joy out of it, wouldn't be mine.
Room number 13, please. Down
Yeah.
the hall to the left.
Yeah, to the left.
Yes. And then we can always have some discretion. You think, no, we don't want discretion, do we?
Which one? Who would be the manager of hell?
Who'd be the manager of hell? Who do you think?
Listen, you're gonna have access to some very private and confidential information. I suggest you use that information wisely
About people.
about people.
What if we lied to someone and said that they're not in hell just because we don't like them?
I mean, if you have the rights and access to that sort of level of power, then yeah, why not?
You might have to write a little poem about that, Charni.
Yeah, definitely. I feel like it will be a disservice if I didn't.
You have to write a little poem about this whole conversation.
Managers of heaven and hell.
Managers of heaven and hell.
They'd be like the personal assistants of God and
Personal assistance of God, yeah.
Would we be virtual? Because look, we're virtual now.
Yeah, you're virtual. It's a bit like, yeah, of course. Of course.
It changed, isn't it? You can't be face to face.
You just do, yeah, you can't be in 2 dimensions at the same time. You know. Absolutely.
We'll wait for the poem. Just sort of listening to everything you said, Charni, I think one of the places where we're the most uncomfortable is in a place where it's fearful and it's unknown.
Yeah.
And that's usually the place where we grow the most.
Mm-hmm.
And your example of doing the play and going to do the playing card set.
Well, that's exactly why I did the play, because I was like, I need to be in an environment where I'm seriously uncomfortable. So I was in a room of, you know, actors, directors, theatre makers, people, I don't know, some people, it was their first project, their 7th, like whatever. They're all, you know, fresh out of uni or still in uni.
Oh, really?
They're like 10 years younger than me. Basically, any insecurity that you had as a person, you have to go and face it when you walk into that room. So that was very interesting. And again, you know, I was the only brown woman in the room. And I'm sort of like, okay, I need to take stock of everything and think about how this is going to reinform my writing. And a lot of it is playing, like making by playing. So it's like you'll be put in a group, here's the idea, make something in 10 minutes. And, you know, when you're with other, like, and it's only by going through all these workshops and doing all of these things. And I was like, this is really, like, it's a lot of fun. Like, I really enjoyed it. But in no other area in your life where someone will be like, here's the thing, go and sit on your own for 10 minutes and make something. And like, I didn't realize how liberating it is as a writer of like being given a prompt or an idea and be like, okay, so this is the play. The premise of the play is you need 3 characters. This is your topic, go. And if you're performing it to the rest of the group, bearing in mind, like, I don't act, you know, I just about have a stage presence when I perform. And even that is something I'm constantly improving on. You know, and, you know, like being an actress at that thing was never me. That's completely out of my comfort zone. I'd rather be the person that's writing the thing that everyone is reading than being the one that goes up and says it. So it was a good exercise in really distancing myself from my writing, which was wonderful, because I've always, anything I'd write, I'd perform. So when other people are reading and performing your work, you're like, oh wow, you've completely interpreted that differently to the way that I wrote it. This is really interesting. So getting that moment of play and exploring and seeing what sort of comes of it is a great way of doing it. So yeah, you do have to put yourself in unknown, scary situations to grow. But I think even the ways that you do that can have boundaries or limitations based on, you know, what other sorts of things you've got going on.
So Mahi, do you think you would write a poem now after, you know, spending some time?
Yeah, we had to write poems in school.
Did you?
Yeah, I wrote a poem. I wrote a rap.
You wrote a rap, right? About
the teachers in my school.
Nice.
And I did it on
Is it like a stanza per teacher, or are we just slating all of them? Are we celebrating them? Like, what are we doing? Just imagining it like a diss track right now. I can't
Yeah,
not.
it was.
It's like a rap
Last
battle
year-
between.
Last year, our teacher, he wrote a rap about me and said that I was so dramatic that I should be in a play.
Right.
So obviously I had to get my revenge somehow. So me
Yeah.
and my friend,
As all good rappers and creative artistic people do,
we wrote
we
a
speak
rap.
from the pen. Yeah, absolutely.
Wrote a rap about all of the teachers. Well, most of the teachers
Yeah.
in my school.
Mm-hmm.
And I did it. We both did it on my year 6 leavers performance. Did it all with
Nice.
parents.
It was for
How
that.
how did it go down? Did people laugh? Was it funny?
yeah,
Was it like, yeah,
People laughed.
nice.
Yeah, and I think
That's a good way to end the year. That's a great way to end the year.
And I think we, as a parent, do you know what I
Mhm.
mean? And even as just as a human being,
Mhm.
you want to be able to encourage children to write poetry. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah,
You
or
want them
just to be able to express themselves,
themselves.
period. And I think most of the time, there is this sort of reticence to, especially like again, being very frank, from the South Asian community is unheard of. It's really hard trying to encourage South Asian parents to be like to pursue, music, or encouraging them to play an instrument, or drama, or anything arts culture sort of related, because they don't think it's something that's a bit of fun, which it is. It's a hell of a lot of fun, but it's not something that you can pursue seriously. And because it's not something you can pursue seriously, it's not taken seriously. So I remember at a parents' evening with a South Asian student and her mum, and I was trying to encourage her. But she was performing very well in drama. And I was like, well, there is an opportunity. She has the grades for her to take it at GCSE. And she would do well. Like, she would pass with ease, but you'd rather her pick a more academic subject and sort of struggle. And her mum was sort of joking with me and was like, yeah, drama to kar bathere kar diya. And I was like, and I was like, okay, like, I understand what you're saying, but it's that whole sort of element of play that, and I was like, I'm trying to get you and her to take it a little bit more seriously. But yeah, it's an issue. It is an issue, and I think as long as students, kids, how at whatever age, find some sort of release of artistic expression. And I found this myself. I don't know if you've noticed, but you're both rocking. It's quite funny.
We always do it. Have you our thought of the week? Have you noticed we swing like this?
Yeah.
Our favourite one was the Titanic one. We do this.
In like synchronization, yeah.
Quite synchronized with that. We do it all the time, don't we? She's the one that starts it. Go on, Mike.
Me and Mum, for one of our TikToks, we wrote poems as well about each other.
Mm-hmm.
Charni was the one that inspired that.
Yeah.
Do you
she did.
remember?
I mean, I made a suggestion, and I'm really glad that you went with it and you did it. I think, especially for really personal things, poetry can be very personal. And I think in really key moments in life, people really like overlook the power of it. It's like, yeah, you wrote it for each other, but how nice is it when it's for your birthday, or when you're marking a celebration at a wedding, at a funeral. So you don't realize the power of those pieces until you're in those sort of environments. So it's something nice to do when it's personal. You're like, okay, if the challenge is, okay, we'll write it for each other, and it's, you have that as proof of your work together, and it's, a testament to the podcast and everything that you create together.
It's very interesting what you said about that particular student, drum maker,
Yeah.
that whole conversation, because we got little drummer bars at home as well. I think my mum would call me a drummer bars as well, wouldn't she?
Yeah, she
Probably.
would.
We got like drama queens and 2 drama kings in our house. Like, everybody's dramatic, right?
Overly.
There you go, overly dramatic.
Yes, that's what I'm saying. So rather than just doing drama budget at home, go to join some sort of stage or a theatre company, at least make some money off the back of it.
We were in Sleeping Beauty production.
Nice. Oh, congratulations. What's the role that you're playing?
We were the what's it called? Ensemble.
The ensemble, all the dancers.
Oh, okay. Nice.
It's an organisation called Rare Productions, and what they do is they provide a platform whereby children can start performing.
Yeah.
And all the older children are actors, so the secondary school children.
Yeah.
They're sort of main actors, aren't they? And
Yeah.
all the primary school children are all the kind of dancers. So these guys, how many dancers did you have to learn?
Too many to count.
Well, that's good. I mean, is that something that you're aspiring to do? Like now that you're going to be in secondary school, if there was, I don't know, the end of school or the Christmas production, would you want to take part? Would you want to do a bigger role? Would you want to have more lines? Do you want to have more stage presence? Or do you want to do sort of dancing, sort of?
I think I'd be happy to do both, but I do want to be in the drama club when I'm in high school.
Nice.
Yeah. And they do dance as well. So
yeah. So your drama body has an outlet when you get to school. Basically, your mum said, let me be the drama queen at home, and you could be your drama queen at school. And so you've got equal balance at home.
The Sleeping Beauty was outside of school, so it was an extra.
Yeah, but again, like I think the benefit of having extracurricular activities gives you a chance to play and explore what things you like doing, what you don't like doing, what things you do like about it, what things you don't like about it, and it helps you figure out whether that's something that you want to pursue. So whether it's in school or extracurricular, it's always worth giving a go. And if you have the means and the time and you want to give it a shot, it's worth doing. You know, they often say that it's the students who can speak another language, can play a musical instrument and do some form of physical sport are the ones that usually do the best academically. So, and it is that's a lot of time commitment to pursue any one of those things, but it's that little and often practice of when you have that crazy timetable of Mondays we're doing this, Tuesdays we're doing this, Wednesdays we're doing this, and that can be very overwhelming. And like we as adults have pretty full-on timetables, and for a student, you know, on top of doing school and then coming home and doing your homework and everything else, you know, we do acknowledge that is a lot, but it's small building blocks to what you want to be and who you want to be in the future. So it's definitely worth considering and pursuing.
And the reason why I'm, you know, in this sort of discussion around being in the arts and being in the creative, you know, it often in our community, as you well know, regardless of, you know, whether it's dance, you know, theatre, poetry, writing, all those things, it's not something we promote, I don't feel.
No, and one of the reasons why we don't promote it is because it's not seen as something that has financial stability. So whereas the more sort of academic based subjects have that academic stability, like the academic worthiness and the financial means that go with it. But if you're not built in that way, that's not for you. You know, like I did triple science at school. And I had the grades. I could very well, I picked a round of different subjects. I could have pursued any one of those things further, but I was like, it's not me. I would spend my downtime reading and writing. So why don't I just make that my main thing? You know, I don't want to be sitting there reading science textbooks when I've got fiction books to read. Come on, like, I would be doing myself a disservice, and then I would, you know, I could see myself like writing or reading other stuff around it to keep myself going, and I was just like, I don't want to do that. I don't want to do that. I want to do this. And it's a shame that the South Asian culture doesn't embrace it more, because a lot of the arts and culture that we now have, it has evolved from Indian tradition. So to not sort of honor it and evolve with it does seem like a shame. Like Indian dramas, albeit Bollywood or whatever, like Indian people can be as dramatic as we want to be, right? We see very extreme levels of it in in film, in TV, in popular culture. And it's okay then. And I think it only becomes normalized, respected, or even accepted when you start making money and it becomes a regular thing. Up until that point, it's not considered.
No.
You need to have a physical, tangible thing for it to be like, you've made it, quote unquote, and your definition of success and what you base that on is entirely subjective. And I think it's really interesting, especially when you see Indian parents or Indian families jump on the bandwagon when people start being successful, but are the ones that can be very difficult up until that point. And I've seen a lot of people in the sort of South Asian space who can sort of vouch for that. They're like, I don't really get what you're doing, but we can be as supportive as we try and can be, but they're still waiting for you to get a real job. So, yeah.
And it's funny because our generational mindset, that's the only way to describe it. Like,
Yeah.
it's passed through generations, isn't it? Or,
Yeah.
And I think as a parent myself right now,
Yeah.
I do have some of that generational mindset.
It is that, but I also think because majority of the arts and culture spaces here are majority male or white of a particular like middle-aged sort of things, are still people who are calling the shots. The perception of that is it's still easier for other people to get further ahead. And there is that, but I think there's also the challenges or the barriers that you face in trying to be in those environments. Because if you don't see your other people like you doing that thing, you wouldn't go for it. If you know, do you know what I mean? As a parent, if Mahi says to you, okay, I'm going to pursue drama seriously and I want to become an actress, you could quite rightly say, you name me one British Asian actress that is successful. You see what I mean? And it becomes that conversation. And if we don't have representation on the other side, you know, the next generation won't pursue it because they're like, well, I don't see myself on the screen. I don't see myself in all of these places. Why am I going to do that? And it is strange because a lot of people ask me, like, we didn't have representation growing up. So it was like, so you're a poet, you don't know anyone else who is a poet who's also brown and is successful, but you still pursued it. And it's like, you know, and obviously, you know, fiction, literature, the literary space changed and there were more voices coming through. And I was just like, we want that to be the normal. We don't want it to be this ostracized, sort of forgotten about thing. And I think the government has a part to play in that because they don't perceive it as being high value. Where we've had a Tory government for as long as we've had them, we've had cuts to arts and culture, which means even if you wanted to pursue it, you now can't. If you don't come from a particular background, or you don't have the financial means, it's a lot harder for you to pursue. So all of that taken into account does make things more difficult. That's not to say that you can't do it. It just means that you'll probably face more challenges than other people. And you have to kind of figure out your own way of doing things.
So on that note, what advice would you give to young poets, especially those from an underrepresented background who are looking to share their voice with the world?
I think as much as it is advice to poets, I would say is to writers or even creative people in general. And these are all things that I still actively practice, which is reading a lot, reading a variety, listening to music, watching films, really embracing arts and culture, questioning, you know, going to the theatre, watching productions, thinking, like, all of these things help change the way that you think. And is really educating yourself on all of those things, because all of those things, as well as leading a very sort of rich and vibrant life, so that informs your writing. A combination of all of those things will essentially make you better at what you want to do. And it's not just about being a sort of master in that space, it's also knowing the craft and doing the work of, like, if you want to be this thing. So, like, for example, if you did want to pursue drama and you wanted to be an actress, think about your favorite films. Think about the famous actresses in those films. What makes their character good? Why do you like them? What's good about the story? And you sort of think about all of these things while you're watching. And I'm forever making notes on things. I can't remember the last time I went to go watch a film, especially in the cinema, where I'm not making notes. Even when I'm at the theatre, I'll sit, physically with a notepad, or I'll make notes on my phone, just ideas, things that come to your mind, and you're like, I don't know what I want to do with that, but I do need to acknowledge that that is something worth thinking about. So it's just little things like that. Like recently, like talking of Titanic, I watched Titanic recently. It was on TV the other night, and I was thinking about the relationship between Jack and Rose, and I was thinking one of the reasons why it's considered a romantic film is because it's like it's forbidden love and it shouldn't happen. She's of a higher class, he's of a lower class, and the whole everything is set on this boat, and it's like the biggest heartbreak is that, obviously the nature of everything that happened means it didn't work out. But at the same time, from a hypothetical point of view, if you're like, well, if they did get together and they did survive, where would they be 6 months down from the line? 6 months, a year from, where would they be living? What would they be doing? Where would home be? Would they set up life in America? Would they come back home? Like, what does that look like? And it's just sort of having those sort of ideas and conversations. And I'm thinking about all of these things as I'm watching. And sometimes it can be a great thing because you think of great ideas. And there's other times I'm like, now you're just overthinking now. You're just reading way too much into it. Just stop. And you can't really enjoy the film because I want to have a debrief and be like, did you think about all of those things? And they're like, well, we're watching the same thing. Like, what are you talking about? And like when people ask me for a review of a film or a book or whatever, I'm commenting on things and thinking about things from a completely different way. And did you watch so and so? Yeah, it was good. And I'm like, well, the characters were like this, the story was like this, and I'm considering all of these factors. So it's any of those things is always done by active participation. You have to something little and often every day. So I'll read a little bit every day. I'll write as often as I can. Listen to podcasts, like something that's new, something that's different, that will make you think, or perhaps write it even in a different way. And I think it's just quite nice to be well informed, and it's fun and I enjoy it, and it can be quite a positive experience. So I would encourage people to do the same. So anything that you want to pursue, learn the craft of it, absolutely study everything there is to know about that thing. So anything that you do with it is like I already sort of know what I'm doing. So if I'm a writer, if I'm a poet, although I read a lot of different, I read in fiction, I read non-fiction, but recently I'm going through a phase where I just want to read a load of poems. I want to read lots of different poets and be like, okay, let's see what happens with that. Some of them are great, some of them are terrible, but I still learn something. So, and I think having that sort of attitude with anything else that you want to pursue can be, it's just informing the way that you do things.
Wow, there's so much to take in.
Yes.
Really. It's
I feel like I've talked a lot.
well, that's the whole point in the podcast, isn't it? That we ask you about your something that you're passionate about, something that you're that you're involved in and you're doing, and it's always really good because I think we don't tap into the creative stuff or the creative things. And it's really nice to hear from someone that is a poet. Like you said, there's not many of you. Like it is born.
Yeah, we are a rare breed, but hopefully not a dying one.
No.
Yes.
So I think it's been really good to hear, how your experience has been as a poet, and just, I think we get so stuck in our own little lives, don't we? Or the
Yeah.
profession that we're in, or whatever we're doing, that
Yeah.
sometimes we can't see beyond this, can we? And you do have
Yeah.
to, you know, you have to take away that narrow and actually widen your thinking.
Yeah.
Back to the Titanic, for example. So,
Yeah.
Mahi, why don't you tell Charni your favourite sentence from the Titanic, your favourite thing at the end?
Can she just move over a little when she was on that boat thing?
Oh, honestly, the amount of people, I know it's turned into a bit of a meme and stuff at the moment, like, you know, ever since it came out, but it was really hard. Like, I think because of the nature of the story, like I'm trying to see it from sort of both perspectives of like Kate Winslet and Leonardo DiCaprio, like early 20s, right? It's a big sort of film, and she was heavily criticized for her weight. Like really bullied and really like, oh, you know, if she dropped a few pounds, then Jack would have survived as well. And it was all of this like really bad sort of thing. Like at the time, when the first time it came out and we watched it, I hadn't thought about all of that. And again, when I watched it recently, I was like, you know, she talked about it in an interview where she received a lot of abuse from it. And I think that's really sad. But it would the crux of the story, it was never about who could fit on the door. The crux of the story was that she survived and he didn't, and it was unfortunate the way that he died. And even just the irony of the "I'll never let go, Jack," and then she lets go, and we're just like, "But you lied to him, and he died in frozen water. Like what? In the middle of nowhere." It's that, and it's taking away from that. Yeah, so you know, it's easy for us to be like, yeah, well, you know, if she moved up a little bit, there would have been enough space, they would have balanced the door, they would have survived, and everything would have been fine.
That's where, like, some people will just watch the movie, that's it.
Yeah. And
Going
sometimes
back,
I wish I could be one of those people, but unfortunately I'm not.
going back to what you were saying earlier, some of us
Yeah.
have more questions after watching the movie, don't we? Like,
Yeah.
and that's where we shouldn't just, you know, mind-numbingly just watch something.
I mean, don't get me wrong, like watching, like binge watching TV series or anything like that, even watching a film, it is a great mind-numbing exercise. It's a brilliant way to switch off. But you have to have that level of switching off. So if I'm watching something that I've seen before, I probably will switch off, and it's great. But there are other times where I'm like, oh, I haven't picked up on that before. Or there's something else that will come in, and it will be like, okay, like I didn't realize that that was, you know, a key detail or something that was quite important. But it plays out how it plays out. So yeah, I have to consciously decide that, okay, I'm going to switch off now. Like this is like numbing time. I need to check out from the real world and reality and all of that, and just be in my imagination and seeing and watching things from a different perspective.
So you have something coming out in the near future as well, don't you?
Yes, so I have over the last few months I've been working on my third poetry collection. I don't know when it will be released yet. It's still sort of a work in progress, but it's very exciting, very different to any of the sort of work that I've done before. I'm exploring my faith, and it's poems about I guess a spiritual journey, and it's observations. It's probably one of the most vulnerable things I've ever written. It's very sort of soul bearing, because a lot of the feedback from what I've got from, you know, people around me, other creatives, you know, my readers, whatever, of like having that sort of gap and like people wanting to get to know me a little bit better and that sort of thing. To the point where even like I've had conversations with my editor of like, you know, are you sure you want to share this? And there's poems that I pulled out that I've second guessed, and I'm like, no, I don't want to, because if you put it in there, it's a topic of conversation. Am I ready to have that conversation? No. So I've had to find limits and boundaries of how far and what I will say. But yeah, I'm really looking forward to that. It's been a long road, and it's going to be a long road ahead as well. But in the near future, book 3 will be out.
Do you have a name for book 3, or is it still?
Not yet. So all will be revealed in good time. But yes, it's yeah. Since I've started it, it's been referred to as book 3.
Okay.
So when, you know, so if anybody wants any updates or anything like that, you'll find out everything across my social media. Yeah, that's me.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for being on our podcast today. We really
Thank you so much for having me. I've really enjoyed myself, and I hope you guys have taken a lot from it as well.
Thank you. No, seriously, thank you very much for joining us. And I think,
You're very interesting.
There you go.
Thank you. Thank you. I'd like to think that I'm not boring, so thank you for that, Molly. I needed that validation.
As well. You think, are you even listening? Like, what's going on, right? But
well, no, when you're moving in sync, it's like I'm listening to what she's saying. Are you listening to what she's saying? We go forwards and backwards.
Yes, it was, you know, we were listening because I was able, we were definitely listening. Right, so
absolutely.
No, on a more serious note, no, thank you very much. I think we need more people like you to get the word out there, to inspire other young people, like Mahi, who's, of an impressionable age, whereby actually, if we teach them now that they can tap into their creative sides, then they will, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, even for your own sort of mental health and your own well-being, you don't have to write poetry, you don't have to write fiction, even if you just journal, even if you just, you're having a hard day and you want to be able to sort of express yourself in a way. I went through a phase where I find it far more effective to write down what I'm thinking and how I'm feeling and be able to find solutions from it rather than spending half an hour trying to explain it to a friend.
Yeah.
It's just your own personal ways of managing yourself. It's a form of emotional regulation. If you can sort of see it that way, and it can be very therapeutic. You just have to sort of find your groove with it. And yeah, so you could do all your drama body on paper and then save something else for stuff that's happening at home.
So Charni is our last guest today on our Inspirational Individuals season. And next time, me and Mahi have a little surprise for you for our Inspirational Individual for our final episode of season 2. And we would like to say, as always, thank you for listening. Bye. I bet you guys are in sync.
You guys look so cute. It's adorable.